All right, my fellow agents, welcome back. It is I, X7, your host of Zenorama, the podcast of heroes and monsters. Since Superman was such a popular topic yesterday, very popular video, thank you all for watching. Really appreciate it. We're going to talk about on Book Review Wednesday, Comic Book Review Wednesday. We're going to be talking about the first ever Marvel DC crossover slash team up slash greatest the battle of the century, Superman versus the Amazing Spider-Man. It finally did happen in early 1976, which, to your humble agent who was very young at the time, was about the best thing that could possibly have happened until the two teams met up. But that wouldn't happen for another 30 plus year, almost 30 plus. Yeah, over 30 years. So, before we get too much further into it, please like, share, subscribe, leave a comment. Let me know what you think of this first ever superhero team up. It was not Marvel and DC's first ever team up to produce a comic book together, though. We'll talk about that just a little bit. In fact, I'd like to actually get that. But let me know what you think in the comments, and if you could, just watch a little longer than normal. Watch the whole thing because it'll be loads of fun. All right, are you ready? Let's roll.
If I can only get unstuck, I'll be swinging at one of my most fearsome foes next week. Be sure to tune in next week and watch me swing into my strangest trip ever in Revolt in the Fifth Dimension.
So yes, indeed, I do own this tabloid size edition. I wish I had a normal comic book. Here is about the size of a normal comic book just sitting here. What if that, as we did that way back when. But this, I pre-ordered. There's a whole, as you can see, a whole $2.50 for shipping, 50 cents for shipping and handling. And as soon as I saw it in the comic book, probably a Marvel comic, because I was deep in my Marvel zombie before there was such a thing. Throws, I saw it, and I wish I had a comic book ad for this. I really should have looked that up, but it is well loved enough that if they're talking about, there are rumors of a facsimile edition or a deluxe edition coming out. And as much as I don't like to double dip, I think after almost 50 years now, I think I could do it. I would probably do it for this because it's got a history, and that would be all just fun. We're going to talk about it a tiny bit, but mostly we're just going to talk about the comic book because the first time I read it, I wasn't sure how much I liked it because I don't know what I was expecting, but my hopes and expectations were sky high, and it wasn't exactly what I thought it would be. But it was 1976, early. It was probably written in 75 and drawn and produced, and it's just great. I love it now. I mean, I'm so glad it's in relatively good shape now. It's not great. It's, like I said, been well loved and well read, like comic books should be. But did it live up to the hype? Yeah, eventually. Okay, let's talk about this. We'll just look for, well, let's go to the actual review. Okay, here is that very ad in question. It did take me a minute to actually find it on the web, but I did. And I don't remember what comic book I saw it in. In 76, I was reading The Avengers, but I still wasn't buying everything because distribution was in a different beast back then. But I saw it. I don't know that it was probably a Marvel comic book, but it could have been a DC, but probably a Marvel, I would guess. But I did order it. There you go, $2.50, 50 cents for postage and handling. I'm assuming it came flat, but it would have been in a gigantic envelope because it's a tabloid sized. I mean, I don't know that I was ready for that, but boy, I couldn't wait. So, having said all that, let's get a little further into it here. There's the actual cover that you saw, live action, and it's got the nice soliloquy from Stan Lee, and he didn't write it, of course, and then the commentary from Carmine Infantino. Both have sadly gone on to their great rewards, and yeah, those are the people that have contributed to it. And there's your opening page, which is great. I mean, they really did a good job in getting the balance between the two heroes, the two villains, and the story. It takes a lot of work. The give and take had to be great. And same thing with all the rest of their team ups. Now, they've done several more. Spider-Man and Superman had a team up, Batman and the Hulk, Teen Titans and the X-Men. And then, of course, finally, the best of them all. And they did other ones too, Batman and Spider-Man, Batman and the Punisher, blah. But then the Justice League Avengers team up, which we will get into sometime. They just have to save it. Maybe around final episode for the episode for 1,000, we'll end up with the final issue. That might be fun. So there's no edited by, although that was amended in more recent publications. Drawn by Ross Andrew for the most part, who was amazing. He was one of Spider-Man's regular artists at the time. They did have a little help from both John Buscema and Neil Adams with some faces and other characters. Dick Giordano, of course, he later on became editor in chief at Marvel at DC. Started out at Charlton. Gasper, but he was helped out by Bob Wiacek and Terry Austin for backgrounds because there was a lot of stuff going on, and they had to keep everyone happy. So they've got Julie Schwartz, Roy Thomas, Marv Wolfman, and E. Nelson Bridwell. I think Roy and Bridwell knew each other probably even beforehand, but those two would know all the background stuff you needed to know. I mean, think I'm a nerd about comic book stuff? Can't touch Roy or Mr. Bridwell. So I wish I'd have written more letters to them at all. But we start out with Superman because you had to start out with Superman, the giant robot. They always tested out on Metropolis. Now, I believe Metropolis in the DC universe is supposed to be in, I want to say, the state of New York, but I believe it was Delaware at some point in time. New York, Delaware, or even Kansas. Right. So, Delaware. That would make it more fun for Wayne and Garth. I'm in Delaware, where Superman hangs out in Metropolis. So, it's a pretty fancy looking robot, but quite of its time. The whole thing, I mean, this is a year probably done in 75 while Star Wars was being shot. So, the super, robots were not quite the same back then. And it's just an agent of destruction. Lots of editorial notes here and there throughout. Now, we're not going to see the entire comic, but probably a lot of it. There's about 50 pages here. So, Lex, still thinks he's smarter than Superman. And he's in his, supervillain phase. He's not a businessman now, but he's still bald. So then we get to meet Clark at the Galaxy building, owned by Morgan Edge. And there's jerkface Steve Lombard, who's always trying to get the best of Clark, who tricks him all the time. He's a jerk. And there's Morgan Edge there, who was kind of a, I don't know, he was their version of, well, anyway. So he's yelling at Clark for not covering it. So he's in big trouble. But he was a news reporter. He wasn't a news. He was a newspaper man, a newspaper reporter, not a television news guy. But be that as it may, look, Jimmy. I think this is Jimmy's only cameo in the entire book. And off he goes. So he finds him again, and now we've got another robot. And yeah, Luthor. So Superman always tries to appeal to Luthor because they were friends long ago, which of course, Superboy doesn't exist. Well, he might for all I know, but he doesn't exist. Well, he did that. So this, of course, yeah. The laser. Seeing more of this. This is probably not Carmine and Stan. This is Nelson and Roy, but it's all right. They got paid, I'm sure. So Superman captures him, and now we get like who we didn't know who Superman was. Truth, Justice, and the Terran Way. This is 76, remember. 75, 76. Now we get to Spidey in all of his glory. So while he did have some faces and stuff and backgrounds, people redrawn bits here and there, this is mostly Ross Andru. It was just, amazing. This was not DC's first. Well, we'll go into that in a minute. So he needs some pictures so he can make some bread from J. Jonah Jameson in the Daily Bugle, and he's run into Doc Ock, who of course is not the Green Goblin, which most people would have said team those two up, Norman but I believe the original Green Goblin was dead at this time, and Marvel used to keep people dead until they could bring them back. But mostly they were dead. And I think the second Green Goblin, Harry Osborn, was rehab. He was in rehab, so I think he was not. So I think, Doc Ock was probably the best choice at the time. You wouldn't want to go with a more sympathetic character like Curtis Connors, the Lizard, and the Vulture was just an old man. So he fights Doc Ock. I think this was the best one. Take a close look at the panels here, because it's going to show up again. A flying octopus. So yeah, it takes 1, 2, 3 people to pilot it. Apparently, the cops still don't want to. They still shoot at Spider-Man because they think he's an outlaw, and he's out of web fluid, and he's also Pete didn't the synchronization, so they didn't get any pictures. I believe this would be an assault now on your employee, and he'd have sued Jameson out of business. All right. So, and he sees a blimp, so look, he runs in to get some water. Now, tell me Mary Jane, no, it turns out Mary Jane had known he was Spider-Man for a long time. They're still friends, but they're hang out a lot. So off he goes, and he forgot to load his web shooters. There's lots of humor in there. Oh, he's got a spider tracer on him. See, I told you that panel would come back. I missed it the first time, but I was just in a hurry to read everything. I wanted to read it so bad. Tubbo. I don't think Ock is I don't think he's very big. He's pretty muscular for an older man. Captures him. They both go to jail. Now we get a Spidey identification. At this point in time, everyone reading this comic book knew who Spider-Man was, and everyone knew who Superman was. The general public knew who Superman was. Not so much Spider-Man. He'd been on the Electric Company, and on television with, of course, the greatest theme song in the world. But that was 10 years prior to this. So, more people knew. Everyone knows who Superman is still. A lot of people know who Spider-Man is. So they're in Deming, New Mexico. And maximum security, and both supervillains are sent here together. They decide to team up, and off they go. Lex has a fake epidermis, so he has a sonic device. And now we get to our villains. We don't even go back. that yeah. I think I don't know if they've reformed Lex much, but here and there in various stories they have. But he's, I miss his old purple and green power suit. I don't know what Doc Ock's like these days in the comic books. And now look at who. Oh, look, there is Jimmy. Oh no, wait, that's Ned and Betty, a working honeymoon, and I've forgotten what his editor in chief there is. So look who's over here. The cast there is Jimmy. Maybe that's not Lucy. I think Lucy's a redhead too. So Pete's had enough of Jameson and just tells him off. And he forgets Mary Jane when he storms off, who's still your old friend MJ. But he hasn't graduated college yet. But yeah, so now they've decided that they're going to replace him with Walter. All these real life people. And he blows smoke in his face, which should have gotten him a punch. I mean, come on, that's just a power play. So, but Clark in his milk toast role infuriates Lois, who, it works because she's, but she goes up and gets herself into trouble. But this is a bit of the worst thing a woman can do is try to change the men around her. I understand that. But Pete saves her, calls her Miss, and then she knows who he is, and then Lois Lane, and then MJ finds him. She's a little, but there's a bit of an age difference here because Pete's in his early 20s, and then MJ's probably the same. Superman would probably at least, and Lois would be in their 30s. I would think they're a bit older. But lo and behold, there he does. But right away, zap. I think Clark, yeah. Phone booth. Now, here is something that's really funny. He wants to change in the phone booth, and we get this. 2 years later, in 78, we would see a very similar gag for the first Superman movie, which got a huge laugh in the audience, at least the one that I was in. And geez, why would so Pete's flying off at the handle and Superman's probably a little perturbed. There they are. So we're 47 pages into the story before our heroes show up and meet each other. Well, show up to meet each other, which is all right. It was worth it. I mean, look at this panel there. That's probably Neil Adams' face there, but everybody else, and the backgrounds, of course. But look at that. I mean, I think that it was a good choice for Ross Andru to do this. I'll tell you why in a little bit when we see that. So they're flying around, and they find out. Well, we find out that that of course our vile villains, the murderous miscreants that they are responsible for this. Now, I'm not sure why Lex would think this would work. I mean, Superman is having second thoughts, but Spidey is on a tear because he's had a bad day, or Pete's had a bad day. But Lex zaps him with red sun radiation. Now, would this work? Because he would have to zap Superman, but then he'd lose his powers, or at least weaken him. And that would have been probably a better idea. But this works. It's a great section because it gives Spider-Man the ability to do this. Lay out Clark. I mean, he hits him so hard that he's flying off panels. There's his foot from the other panel. But the other thing, one of the things I really like about Ross Andru's art, and he did the first, 3 years of the Metal Men, and I love the Metal Men. Wish Hanna-Barbera had been able to do them as a series in the 60s because it would have been right up their alley. But he did that artwork with Mike Esposito as his inker, and it's great. And what he does is he introduced me, and I'm sure he didn't invent it, but these characters flying a little bit there. You can see Superman's foot's out of the panel. His cape's out of the panel, and he almost hits Spider-Man so hard he flies off the panel. So I love that. I copied it when I was doing a lot more drawing. I mean, right there. And then, he bounces off. It just gives it a little, I think it's a 3D effect. I'm sure that somebody still does this. I think John Byrne did it, but it's just wonderful. Red sun radiation doesn't last long, bounces off, and punch. It's a good thing he's got something of a healing factor because he can't talk anymore. So they do talk, they become friends, and off they go. Now the team up has happened. So now the whole story about the superheroes always fighting because they have a misunderstanding. It was caused, at least caused here, by the supervillains. Well done. Spidey is air water skiing or air skiing. The Soup's there. We find out that Superman never stunned himself, so he doesn't look at people and see them naked. So you can tell Pete's a little younger, probably 10 years younger than Clark. And there we have him, the vile villain. They've got Mary Jane there now. Knowing both Lois as a reporter and Mary Jane as, a redhead, right, Lilith? They've had some choice words for their hosts, Doc Ock and Lex Luthor. I mean, lots of hosts, lots of words. They're probably still just badmouth them. How they ate or went to the bathroom, they've been gone a minute, so go figure. They go to Africa, and they have to fight a native who's got red sun radiation, so it wears off. I don't know why they couldn't have just ran him out of breath. He still wouldn't have their, the endurance, but there it is. And they find out where they are, the Injustice Gang. Now, even as an 11-year-old, when I got this book, almost 11 years, I'd have got it probably after it came out in March 11th. No, March 11th, March of 1976. So I probably got it sometime after that. So I was almost 11. If the Injustice Gang was around, that means the Justice League was around. So you can't really. Gary Conway, who wrote this, said, "Don't bother trying to figure out where it took place. Just don't do it. Don't do it. It's not worth it." He did say it was on Earth $, which I'm sure they made a fair amount of money on this book, and they've reprinted it several times, but not recently. So once again, this is a fun little interlude where Morgan Edge and Jameson meet each other and have a chat, and then they go on about their business, which is nice. He actually says, "Take Clark Kent." Is that a series? I mean, it's like a vaudeville routine with these two. But we see what's going to happen here. They're going to disrupt the Earth's atmosphere with a high-powered laser. A bald maniac with a laser. Why he didn't aim it at, the White House or something, we'll never know. They could have called it a Death Star. But look who's showing up here out there. Spidey's piloting a spaceship with Superman, but unfortunately they get caught. Well, they have a battle. But then they revive. I mean, they get caught because Superman gets zapped. It's got more red sun radiation. It's kind of a thing, but they take on each other's foes. I thought these are, since they're cybernetic, they're attached to his mind. I'm sure pulling them off was painful, at least with the feedback that he got. His glasses break, and Spidey lays out Lex for a minute, but they have a tsunami or a seismic wave, super tidal wave. Either will work, Stan and Carmine and Pinky. So they're still fighting. Soups has to go stop the do Warner Brothers make movies? Warner Brothers didn't own DC at the time. Interesting. But off they go. Soups has to stop the tidal wave. Spidey gets to fight everyone, but now he turns the villains against each other, of course, because Ock's glasses are broken, but he can still see enough to make the thing go turn off. Superman stops it by building up a huge force of sound, so it doesn't swat everybody. Lex attacks Otto, but they win. So they capture. Spidey's caught everyone. They're webbed up, and they shake hands. The girls are not even wondering. Well, Mary Jane already knows and is covering for Peter, but off they go. And then we have an epilogue. So automatic video camera, which is really small for that day and age, because that would have been a 3/4 or 1-inch presentation. Pete got pictures. Now, Superman, Clark would probably know that Pete's Spider-Man, just because their heart rates would be the same and he could hear it. Pete probably wouldn't care because he didn't. So there they go, the four of them off to go have dinner on their publishers and whatever you call Morgan Edge producers. So that is it. It is definitely the end. Here's the back, inside back cover where it shows how they decided this. And this cover has been paid homage to many times. And there's the back cover, which we saw. Here's one panel from What If number 1 where I was happy to see that this there, and the watcher is explaining in this time continuum or another. No, it was on Earth $sign. But it's funny that they have the Squadron Supreme fighting the Justice League, since if you know, you know. But that is it. There's the cover. But that is it. Tomorrow we will be talking about The Land of the Lost, and with a couple of good episodes already. And having said all that, my fellow agents, this is X7. We'll be signing off. I'll leave you with a little video for that tomorrow. But let's turn up the. There we go. Speaking of the Avengers, we are needed. This is X7 signing off and phasing out.
We'll be right back for another exciting adventure with Superman.